Dr. Duke Bradley III, our principal at Banneker High School. He's the 2018 County Principal of the Year, and we know there are a lot of improvements going on at Banneker, so it's great to have you, Dr. Bradley. Next, we have Genesis Castro, who sort of fills our student role, even though she's now a graduate of the University of Georgia. East Tree Ridge High School in Gwinnett County, and she's also a grad student around the corner at Georgia State, and she's the Director of Education at HOPE, the Hispanic organization promoting education. And then I'll skip over to Chris Clark, who's the President and CEO of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. He represents, of course, the business community statewide. The Chamber has a tremendous commitment to education, so thanks for being here, Chris. And finally, Allison Townsend, who was our 2019 Georgia Teacher of the Year. She's about to spend the entire year traveling the state, and she's taught in Fulton County at Shakrag and Barnwell Elementary Schools. So thanks for being here, Allison. Now I'm going to introduce two fellows you probably know, but in case you don't, these are the candidates for State Superintendent of Education. First, of course, we have the incumbent State Superintendent of Education, Richard Woods, who's a Republican, former teacher and school administrator. Thanks for coming, Mr. Woods. And we have his opponent, Otha Thornton, who I mispronounced your name a moment ago, sorry about that. He's the Democratic Party nominee, retired military officer, and former president of the National PTA. Welcome, Mr. President. So, Mr. Woods, Mr. Thornton, each of our panelists will have 2 questions each for you, but I'll get us started with our opening question, and you'll have 2 minutes, please, if you will, to respond to this question. And it's a really broad question that you can answer however you'd like. What's your vision for the future of education in Georgia? And what will you do in the next 4 years to help make it happen? We'll start with you, Mr. Woods.
Well, again, coming in office a little over 3.5 years ago, where we were in Georgia is that we talked about tests, we talked about accountability. But the reason I ran is because we did not talk about children. Children continues to be the number one thing we talk about at the Department of Education. It is what we begin each and every day. We lived in a time in which all we did was, again, look at accountability. But our most important thing as educators is building relationships. That's what we do. And I think by doing so, we expand the opportunities in schools. One of the things we looked at was, reducing testing. We had the largest reduction of testing in our state's history. We reduced the number of mandated, observations that both teachers and administrators had to do with, just so we could allow them to do what they need to do, and that's dealing with our kids. We've expanded opportunities. For many years, we in Georgia said that every child had to go to a 4-year university. Worst thing we ever did. We need to make sure that our kids have opportunities, technical schools, military, universities, and so we've done that. Expanding opportunities in STEAM across the state, giving our kids things in which it's more than just being able to take a test. The fine arts is extremely important. Giving our kids time to come out and play. Those are things that we're looking at. Our mission at the Department of Education, what I've shared with the staff, is that we are getting our kids ready for life. Not a test, but getting them ready for life. And we've exceeded that, and we continue to look at that. Again, if you go back, 3.5 years ago, what I inherited and where we have moved, we've moved a great distance. And that's because we've been working with you in partnership throughout the state. And that's another thing we've done throughout the state. For us in the Department of Education, we were an eye on the silos, but no more. We are here to serve and support what goes on in education. So that's what we're going to continue to do, to build upon the success, but expand the opportunities and make sure we focus on our children each day.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Thornton.
Well, it's wonderful to be here today in Otha Thornton. The big 3 things I want to do as far as Georgia's concerned and addressing our issues is, first of all, wraparound services. 30% of our children in Georgia experience poverty, and it impacts not only their families, but classrooms and our school systems. And some of you remember Maslow, where you have to meet the basic needs of the child. First the basic needs, then the psychological needs, and then it leads to the self-fulfillment and self-actualization. So you have to really intimately understand that when you're trying to apply things to the system in educating our children. Also along with that, if you look at school safety, that's a critical piece. If you meet the basic needs of children, you can help reduce some of the challenges that we're having. Wraparound services include psychological services, it includes social services, and that's critical as we move forward. And the third area is that of funding. And we talk about workforce development. I mean, I'm working already with Mr. Richard Keatley, who is the candidate for the nominee for the labor force management. I've actually had experience in working with school districts and linking them up to chambers of commerce and businesses to make a difference. And 25% of Georgians have a bachelor's degree, so I always said, where are the others? So I mean, we have to look at programs that we have in Georgia, like Coweta County, the German apprenticeship program, which I actually lived in Germany and saw how great that program was and can help expand those things around Georgia. Also, I've worked in the IT industry, which I am now. I've worked in the transportation industry and major industries in Georgia, which I can make a big bridge in the workforce development piece.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we're going to have our panelist questions. I think Duke's ready to go. Duke Bradley.
There is no question that I assume that you agree that teachers, like my colleague Allison and others, school leaders and the like, have the most direct and measurable impact on student achievement. What steps can you take or have you taken to improve educator quality in the state of Georgia?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Thornton, you can go first on this one.
Okay, first of all, the principal, when you talk about school systems, is the most important as far as creating the environment and working on getting the resources so when you come to the building, people are comfortable, they feel safe, and just that positive environment. And the teachers are the front line. You have to ensure that as the principals provide the resources so that teachers can do their job. I don't believe in micromanagement or extensively managing teachers. You let them what they need to do and let them do their job. Qualifications are important, ensuring that they have the proper certifications. Professional development is very important, and I think especially leadership training is very important, and additional training for teachers. Hopefully systems paying for the education. A lot of people don't know this, but the United States military is the most highly educated workforce. At every stage of your military career, education is encouraged, and you can only go so far. With education, you have to continue to continuously take military education courses, including masters, PhDs, to move to the highest levels. So again, qualifications and also leadership training and giving them the opportunity to do the job.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
Again, as a former administrator, as a former teacher, I see those things through these eyes, and I know the importance. What we've been able to accomplish again in a relatively short time in the Department of Education. We've taken back the requirement, the onerous requirement of really having every teacher having to have the same number of observations. A very big burden upon administration as well, where it became more of a checklist, to be honest. Also with that, we've seen a large reduction in testing. And let's focus on giving our teachers time to teach, doing the things that are most essential. We look at our teacher resource link, providing them resources that help them navigate the classroom, whether they are an experienced teacher or a new teacher. Those are things that we are revamping and providing them with services. Making sure that not only our students are safe, but our teachers are safe. I mean, that's a whole broad thing. But I want to assure people that as someone who had to deal with, the disaster plan, we've always had that in place. But I think it is trying to make sure that people know what's going on. So we're going to continue our commitment to make sure that we're giving them some resources, supporting them, but allowing them to build those relationships with their children.
Our question is from Genesis Castro.
Good afternoon. I've had the pleasure of working with students from many different counties in Georgia, including Cobb County, Gwinnett County, Hall County. And it's no secret that within the past 20 years, the demographics of Georgia have changed dramatically. Many students come from immigrant families and they don't know how to navigate the education system, they're not familiar with it, they don't know how to navigate the process to apply to college. So as superintendent, how would you support school districts in supporting students with these backgrounds?
Well, again, one of the things we've already started, we have something called a continuous needs assessment. And again, that allows the local districts to, again, to really look at their unique populations. As demographic changes, then they, prioritize what they need to do to address, different needs, because the whole systems are different. So again, we don't want to just, put somebody in the same box. But as we continue to build that, we're looking at, putting our resources at the DOE on the front side so that everyone can benefit, from those resources. Again, expanding our options and supporting our counselors. Again, that's the first line that many people who have issues, or as they come into, that's the person they're going to deal with. So we're looking at how do we expand those opportunities. Again, working with business and industry, we have something called our counselor companion and our career pipeline. And so this will allow parents and students to navigate and look, what does it take for me to move to the next step? Where are those things that we can, use those resources out there to support, our young people as they come in. But again, this is something we hope to invite everyone into the fold and say, is it something you can do a little bit better than us, but we can navigate and point you to that direction.
I would say in Georgia, our audio doesn't match our video. We talk about the demographics, but by 2040, 2045, the majority of Georgia will be black and brown. And what's happening in reverse is we're having policy, and I'm really nonpartisan when we start talking about policy. What is good policy for our state? So when we spend $60 million a year for student scholarship organizations, and then we're going to $100 million, that's taking money out of the public schools. And we've had 16 years of austerity cuts. That's 16 years of impact on our students. So now this year, it's an election year, so they're giving $167 million extra dollars to fund some of these things. And then you talk about migrant services, what are we doing there? As a state school superintendent, those are the things we need to look at to address as we move forward.
Our next question is from Chris Clark.
Guys, both, first, thank y'all for running. Thank you for agreeing to serve. That's very, very important. We appreciate that. The number one issue on the poll that Alan mentioned earlier was job creation in the economy. Economic development has changed a lot in the last few years. It's no longer about location, location, location. It's about talent, talent, talent. As I go around the state, the three things that I hear from business leaders the most are, one, I can't find the talent, I can't find the kids to hire that I want. Many communities, the companies feel like there's a disconnect between their local school system and the jobs that they're creating that they have open. And the third thing that I hear is they're very appreciative of the advancements that we've made and the progress that we've made. But their world is changing so quick, the skill sets of their workers are changing so quick, they're afraid that we're going to get left behind. So you two want to control the pipeline. My guys are at the end of the pipeline. Tell me, how do you address those? What message would you have me take back to those business leaders around the state?
Mr. Thornton's first this time.
Okay, with the economic development, so I have extensive experience in that. In Maryland and Arundel County school system, I worked on a panel with the school superintendent, military, Chamber of Commerce. We had 10 high schools. We surveyed the communities around the high schools, see what their needs were, and we established particular industry areas for the high schools. My particular high school is Homeland Defense. So we connected with the National Security Agency, which we have the Army Cyber Command coming here in 2020. That's a big industry. We can become the Silicon Valley of the East here if we do it right. So basically what we did, we connected with those businesses. We were able to bring professionals in the classroom. We worked with the State Department of Education in Maryland, and we were able to get it where the curriculum and standards were developed and pretty much approved at district level. So our kids came out of the schools with experience and enrolled right into the industry. So in Georgia, that's one of the models that I would like. Now in Georgia, I've been down to the Golden Isles Career Academy in Brunswick. They're very well connected with the technical school and the industry in that area. I would also look at, I mentioned about the different industries I worked in. I worked for Delta Airlines for 3 years. So I would be inclined to go talk to the Delta president and say, hey, can we look at putting some aviation programs in some of our rural high schools, you know, for a few $1 million to help feed that pipeline, the largest employer. Or I'm with the General Dynamics IT, working in that industry to bring more people into the pipeline. So there are a lot of, I have a lot of extensive experience, and like I said again, the current labor commission is running now. We will work very closely in ensuring that we provided a great, basically, career pipeline out of the high schools. We've got the necessary skills to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton.
Well, again, I go back to, I think, where we were 3.5 years ago. You didn't hear that. That was not the conversation we were talking about. But as we move forward, this is what we've done in the Department of Education thus far. We have, to my knowledge, the only embedded economic development liaison inside the Department of Education. So that was something that was very important to me, to have that relationship with business, to say we want something more than that relationship of just being, a source of resources and money and things, which has been typically in the past. But as we continue to expand that, we appreciate working with the chamber. We have, a SEALS program, which again, as students acquire those SEALs, it lets them know that the business they are career ready. And that's something that we work together with business and industry as we talk and say, what do you need? Not saying our perception, but having that in part. We now have, economic development, districts across the state. Again, we're getting ready to roll. I think we'll have 5 out there. But part of the thing is that this encourages our local districts to work with business and industry, one-on-one. So they are having conversations across the board of what that looks like. We also had business and industry work with our CTA, our career program, in which they sat down and they helped develop our strategic plan for that. Now, this group of business and industry leaders, we didn't say we want to just throw you away right now. But they're going to become part of our advisory group. So we're not, letting business just fall aside, but they've got to become, because what in the past, what our CTA program became was Grandpa's old shop place. We have to make sure that what we do and move forward, that it always remains relevant. And I think those are conversations that we are having throughout the state. We're attracting business, we're inviting them, and we are very responsive. Some of the things you look at, the new pathways and courses, whether it's dealing with Pinewood Studios, mining industry, those are things that we are looking at and say, what do you need? And we will make those courses happen.
Allison Townsend.
Good afternoon. I think we can all agree that keeping effective teachers in our classrooms has real benefits for our students. Yet teacher turnover is a huge problem for us and for everyone nationally. We just talked about how nearly half of our teachers are leaving the profession within 5 years. So how will you lead the department to help improve teacher retention?
Well, I think as I came into the office, we had a survey, about the first that I know of, in which we polled teachers. We had over 50,000 educators, respond to us. So we've got to listen to what our teachers are saying, what our administrators are saying to improve. Now, in doing that, we did respond. We looked at it and said, we cut down the testing. That was one of the things we looked at, the largest mandated testing in our state's history. We cut down the observations with them. What we've been doing as well is we've given them training, whether it's our new standards and we roll out science, social studies, PE. We're supporting those things because a lot of things have been typically just thrown to the past. Fine arts. There was not a single fine arts person at the department in over 20 years. But yet, we put that person in and updated every single standard in that area. So we have to make sure that we maintain a level of commitment to our teachers each and every year. Now, looking at some things that we could possibly do and working with the General Assembly, we have a high demand, field. And I think that as we can offer and say, classify education as the high end in the field, that means they can have that education paid for on the front end. And for a starting teacher, I'll assure you, having that education is extremely important. But on the back side, it is looking at, we're capped at 21 years. Well, that means for the rest of the time we have an education, we have to do that. But my suggestion would be let's expand and perhaps have a couple more step raises at least. so that gives us a starting point in which we can meet financially the needs on the front and the back side as well.
A couple of things. Number one, properly compensating teachers. I looked at a couple of years ago, I think it was 2014, where they said we're going to give all the teachers a 4% pay raise from within the state budget. Then they came back and said, oh, by the way, you have this 4% pay raise, but we're going to not pay insurance for bus drivers and support staff. So you had the school boards scrambling to figure out how they're going to compensate some of the, I call it politics. So we have to really look at that, make sure that we properly compensate our teachers. And there's other things we can do. In some places around the United States, I've seen loan forgiveness for teachers. That's something we can look at. If we can find $1 billion to grow a corporation here, we can find money to offer programs like that to teachers. Housing subsidies, those are something that we can do. Again, if we can find $1 billion and try to bring a company here, we can find perks to keep teachers in the field in Georgia.
Come back down here to Duke. Go ahead, sir.
So at Banneker High School, we have reconciled that our work must extend beyond the provision of quality instruction for our students. That's because many of our young people come to us with needs that negatively impact their classroom performance. On this notion of wraparound services, what specifically can you do to support schools in providing quality wraparound services for all children in both rural and urban settings?
Mr. Thornton.
Okay. Again, this year we received an extra $167 million. And I understand for the first time this year, this Department of Education is doing wraparound, putting in more wraparound services to address it based upon funding, and that's a good thing. As far as we move forward, we have to continue to make sure we get that funding. As I mentioned, you have to critically and intimately understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If a kid is hungry, if a kid has problems with hearing or vision, and you don't pick that up, that impacts the educational outcomes of that child. And then when you get into the mental needs, psychological needs from coming from traumatic events, or also from the standpoint of belonging. Do they belong? They feel like they belong in the school. Do they feel welcome in the school? All those things are very important. Which can be provided by wraparound services, additional guidance counselors, additional psychologists, and then just fulfillment. When you meet those basic needs and psychological needs, you will get that great student outcomes that we need to excel.
Well, for us as a department, it's been an exciting time. One of the things we started actually a couple of years ago was our Title I pilot. And that allows us at the local level to expand the use of how we use our federal funds. And by doing so, and not pigeonhole that, you can now use those to meet needs of students, whether it's academically, social, emotional, wraparound service, so it gives more flexibility. This year alone, we'll be looking at giving $1 million to mental health. Again, one of the things we have continuously tried to stress. Also, looking at the positive environment of students in school safety. Those are some things that we continue to give, and look at money as well and providing our services there. Wraparound services, again, one of the things we had this year is that we'll be providing a coordinator. So we've looked at the Marietta model and trying to expand that opportunity. Not necessarily we're going to duplicate it, but expand that opportunity throughout the state and see what we're looking at. One of the things I think I go back to is giving our time for teachers to build relationships. Relationships are what we're about. They're students, they're kids, they're not numbers or digits, but that's where we're going to make the biggest difference. And I think as we do that, we continue to meet needs, whether it's academic, whether it's social emotional, whether it's just basic necessity. And I think one of the things we look at is we're talking with the USDA to see how can we perhaps use some of the food that necessarily goes to waste. Now we can provide that to the homes as well. So it's a very comprehensive plan, but a lot of great things are moving in this area, which was very pleasing to see.
Genesis, you have the next question.
Well, in light of the recent school shootings, safety is definitely a priority for many of Georgia's families. The House and Senate will have committees to have looked at this issue and make recommendations. As superintendent, how would you ensure that school safety is a priority?
Well, again, for an individual who has worked with disaster and school safety plans, that's something that I used to do in Irwin County. And so again, I reassure people, safety is not something we have ever put on the back burner. As crises come up, it rises, but that's something we have continuously looked at. Now, I think today's time has created a different environment. And so, yes, we are looking at extending some things. Because I'll be honest, when I was a teacher, we had more guns out in my student parking lot than our police did, okay? We never thought anything about it. But because of that, we look at trying to be comprehensive, that yes, we have to harden our schools. One of the things we look at, of course, we work with the General Assembly. We have $16 million. We have bond money that's going out and distributed to help, harden those facilities. We continue to work with the federal government to see as they can produce things. GMA is working with our local school districts as well to make sure that we are communicating. So we do have a high level of communication, looking at what is response time. But also in conjunction to that, we're looking at what are the wraparound services that we need. Are we committing ourselves? We're trying to, looking at expanding our services with both mental health, our positive school environment. Those are things that which are, require us to expand the opportunities. And so as we begin to move, you will see, things look at, we will harden it, but we've got to look at the backside. And that's meeting some of these needs that, move those kids to perhaps committing something that, is very unspeakable.
I'll be very succinct with that. State school superintendent, the role I can play in that is in the budget process. Basically doing a study, a timely study, saying how much do we need, what do we need. And from working at the national level, I can pull in resources that I've worked with around the country, like the Children's Safety Network, programs like Rachel's Challenge that addresses school environments and improves the safety and well-being of the classes. But there are a lot of different programs out there. Just pull them in here to Georgia to assist with that, and also the funding.
Thank you. Chris?
So it's interesting, one of the number one issue on the word cloud up there is equity. So I want to put on my parent hat for a minute, if I can. So I spend a lot of time in schools, and I see the inequity that's out there from a funding standpoint. I've been in some rural communities lately where the only access a kid has to computers or to the internet is if he gets lucky enough to get on the site or to get the elective for a computer class. And then I go into my son's school, Booth Middle School in Peachtree, and every kid has a laptop that they get to take home every day. I'm curious about what you guys would do to change the funding formula to give flexibility to address these changing needs that the students have and that our administrators and teachers
Mr. Thornton?
Well, a lot of people, they take snapshot or microwave looks at problems. So in Georgia, when you talk about equity, you really have to go back to 1870 when the department started. It started black and white. And then as you move to 1954, Brown versus Board, Georgia said, we're not going to comply. 1956, they passed laws that Governor Griffin at the time said, not only will we not comply, but we will make every public school private in Georgia before we integrate. So if we look today, fast forward to 2018, we have a situation where we're giving $100 million to private schools that we don't have to account for. And so when you talk about equity, we're taking money out of public schools with legal public policy managed by the Georgia Department of Education. And this is not under Mr. Woods, this is over a long period of time. So we have $100 million next year. So until we can, with our legislators and people of Georgia, have the will to take some of these funds back, we will not address equity. But through the budget, through equity, through looking at areas and saying this area needs additional 20 million or whatever, we will have to put a task force together to look into that and determine how we can get more monies to those rural areas, working with corporations also to bring in resources. Take Savannah, Georgia. That southeast corridor, you have the Georgia ports. How can we work with the Georgia ports to bring in more funds into those areas? How can we work with Delta Airlines to bring in more resources? Delta gives about $30 million a year. They're very responsible as a corporation. So we really got corporations to step up to make a difference here where the public taxes and funding doesn't cover that for equity.
Again, looking at the funding formula, again, that was something I've been well versed with since I was in education in 1988 and moving forward. You know, as we look at that, I mean, I'm very appreciative that we have fully funded education for the first time that I can remember in my life. But what we still have is we have a 1985 formula. It does not match what, you know, a 19 or, you know, 2018, you know, funding of school looks like. And so we need to really address that. We need to have a very prioritized, very flexible system. One of the things I think that we have, you know, looked at that I'm very proud of is the ESSA model that we created the plan for our state. I think that is a model that can be replicated so that educators and our stakeholders can come together and say, this is what we really need within education. And one of the things we look at, I know we had, you know, a group look at education, but myself and the Department of Education really had no part in that. And we have to invite our educators and people that have one-to-one, you know, knowledge of what that into the process. And so that's something that we're going to, you know, continue to move forward with. But we do have to look at a system that takes into account many different things. I mean, for me in South Georgia, what I look at is that, you know, if the price of diesel fuel goes up, that has a big impact. When it went up a few years ago, that was $600,000 that Irwin County had to absorb, that the state did not provide. Okay. Again, looking at technology costs. I mean, when I started school, technology for me was a piece of chalk. Okay? But today, it is quite different. I mean, basically, our kids wear technology on their hip. And so we have to have a system, again, that does prioritize and allows us to meet the needs. And I think as we do that, we expand our opportunities, we expand business. I think, you know, inviting them into the process. With our STEM and STEAM initiative, one of the requirements we have is that business has to be at the table. Like I said, Georgia and education, this is not just a Department of Education problem. This is a Georgia issue that we all have to come together with. Allison.
As a third grade teacher, I see firsthand how a significant amount of testing can hurt our kids. It takes away time that I can be teaching, and it takes away time that they can be learning. I also hear from colleagues how frustrated they are with the amount of testing. Under your leadership, what can be done to alleviate some of that testing?
Well, I'm glad to say we've done something about that. You know, again, with Senate Bill 364, we did see the largest reduction of mandated testing across in our state's history. So that was something that, again, listening to teachers that I knew was very important. But as we looked at that, we've been able to reduce some of the redundant testing with milestones. I mean, middle school students who are now taking high school courses don't have to come back and take the milestones middle school test. Again, that's a little bit redundant. For those that are in high or at least in college, some of the milestones have been taken away, and again, so we're very appreciative of that. You know, as we continue to move forward, one of the things is that we had a group, as we looked at some of the testing, some individuals within the ESSA plan wanted to make first and second grade testing high stakes. Well, we created something called Kingville, and we said we are not going to make that high stakes. It is going to be formative, it's going to be based on our standards, and allow and provide our teachers with a tool that again allows them to address learning needs as they go. We now currently have a testing pilot going on. And by doing so, we're looking at trying to transform and maybe move from what I call the autopsy report to the formative, you know, diagnosis and where we need to move. So we're moving a lot of stones out of the way, and that we really have not had the opportunity in the past. So yes, but we also need, I would say, this help at the local level. Some of the testing that is coming there is typically what is initiated there, but we're not done yet. We plan to come to the General Assembly and again continue to press the point that we want to at least be down to the national level of required testing, and hopefully that will begin to alleviate some of the issues there.
Basically, same here as far as testing. I don't believe in high stakes testing, and assessments and diagnostics. That's great. But as far as high stakes testing, totally against it. We'll continue to reduce it to the required level. But what we do want to do is ensure that we can compete with the nation and global, being globally competitive with the testing that we provide here in Georgia.
Thank you all, and I think are we ready to move to our audience questions? Okay, thanks, Diane. So we have Dana and Steve and Diane with microphones, and are making their way, or she's about to, make their way through the audience. So raise your hand, tell us who you are, and you'll be asking the candidates questions, and we'll give them both a minute to respond. So let's see, where's our first question? See a couple of hands up over here. All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mary Palmer, and I'm a community education advocate, primarily focusing on Atlanta Public Schools. I'd like to ask a question for the candidates to understand what role do they think that the leadership within the districts, the superintendents, as well as the principals within the school have on the impact of our children's education and getting to the next level?
See, who did we end with? Who went last?
Okay,
Storm, you wanna go
so,
first?
so what I usually do before I take a job and put it in the job description and qualifications, I think if you look in Article 8 of the Constitution, it lays it out clearly. And what that is, as a state school superintendent, I will serve as the chief administrator and chief advocate for the state level. So my job is to make sure I give resources and support your school district based upon the Georgia model of your school system having local control. So your voters in Atlanta elected your leaders. So once your leaders come to me, your superintendent, and your board and say, you know, Superintendent Thornton, we need this. It's my job as a state superintendent to try to support your requirements based upon which your leaders are asking for.
Yeah, if I understood the question, as far as the principal and the relationship even with superintendents at local level, I firmly believe the principals, the school principal, is the most important person, bar none, in education. Because whatever level they set as far as their bar, that's what their staff is going to get. That is how important that is. I don't care, you can have a staff full of Michael Jordan, LeBron James, or whatever, but if that principal is calling all the wrong plays, that staff is going to look really amateurish. And so we have to make sure that that's the relationship that we fully support, because that's where we're going to make the difference, because they are the team leader, they are the people with the boots on the ground. Now, at the local level, and again, I look at this even as state school superintendent. If you are a local superintendent, your job is to support and serve those people at the school level. That's where you're going to make the changes, because again, for us at the department level, and we're trying to move services, we're trying to help and provide resources for those folks in need. And I think for our local superintendents as well, the same thing transfers down into that level. And so it is so extremely important. Leadership, bar none, is probably the most important thing that you're talking about, because those people hire, those people make decisions that have an impact, and have an impact on the ability of their teachers and individuals to make a difference day in and day out.
We have a question over here.
Yes, I'm Leo Shorthouse. I've heard from a number of people lately who are leaving the teaching profession who said they're not leaving it because of the kids, they love the kids, they love the job of teaching. They're leaving because there's an excessive amount of, they talk about paperwork and just stuff that goes on in the schools. Is this an accurate reason? Is this a widespread problem, or is this not? And if it is, what can the leader of education in Georgia do to keep these people who are really committed to kids that don't want to do the other stuff?
Well, again, I'm used to doing stuff as an educator, and so I understand what their problem is and issues. You know, it is a little bit of, I would say it is an issue. But what is that issue connected to? I think the high stakes testing, again, because what you had is that I mean, to be honest, I went and just everywhere I went, it was data rooms, it was things, and we were data rich. And we know more about a child than they know, again, probably the parents know if it comes to that. But it is being able to properly use that information, and so you're just not checking the box and going through it. I think one of the things we look at was the reduction of mandated observations. Again, basically that was a check in the box initiative. And not giving our individuals, our principals and teachers time to sit down and actually talk and come up with what is the viable solution. As you look at that, for us even at the Department of Education, we are trying to streamline processes that allow even our districts to do some things, again, such as the continuous needs, assessment. As we do that, we brought just our entire department together, and so that they don't have to deal with federal programs or school improvement or nutrition, but it's collectively coming together and saying, this is something we can streamline. And I think as we streamline those processes, then we begin to free up more time. And it is something we look at and we continue to hear. And again, I think that's one of the things, one of the reasons I have a teacher advisory group, so that we can sit down and talk about it. And these are things that we talk about all the time and work on solutions for them as well.
Same thing here as far as just streamlining issues. I had the privilege to work in 2 White House administrations, and one of the things we always looked at is efficiency. We're highly efficient, so based upon seeing different management systems and different efficiencies, I would get input from teachers, superintendents, principals, and students, and say, what can we do to reduce some of these administrative requirements to free up time for teachers to be able to teach and students to have more instructional time.
Question back here.
Hi, my name is Michelle Simpson. I'm a student of a middle school, a parent of a middle school student, and a former governance council member. So Fulton County went to a county-wide charter system, which I thought was really good. It allowed the governance council to be filled with students, teachers, parents, and community members, while still letting the schools take advantage of the economy of scales when it comes to resources and basic business functions like HR, legal, accounting, that really burdens a lot of individual charters. And I want to know what you all thought about a statewide charter system, in which each school has kind of the control of the curriculum is left up to the governance council, which is made up again of the students, teachers of that local school, community members, but the schools can still take advantage of the fact that there's an HR department that serves the whole district, so they don't have that individual cost.
Mr. Thornton?
As far as the charter system is concerned, my philosophy about charters, as long as they are accountable to your taxpayers, I'm okay. And if Fulton County determined that this is the system they wanted, based upon the folks being elected, then how you run that, that's up to Fulton County in the charter system.
I wanted to know what you thought about a statewide, expanding it statewide.
Expanding the statewide. I'm really into local school districts. They attempted that, I think, in 2016 with the Opportunity School District, and I fought against that because, again, it caused a lot of issues and it costs a lot of duplication of efforts and money. We want to be as efficient as possible.
Again, I want to say, I think you're the most mature-looking middle school student I've seen. For clarity, but I think
need some credit recovery there.
But I would say this: as we look at moving forward, I mean, again, local control is what it is. Every school system, again, to your point, can we have a statewide system? I mean, in theory, we can have that today. It's just left up to the local school districts to decide whether they want to, become a charter system, what we call our, SWISI or, strategic waiver, or perhaps our traditional model. So that is already in place, and I think it is something we look at. As we, move forward, what I encourage with the governance model is that all districts, they need to be looking, listening to their parents. They need to be listening to industry and business and having, those advocates there, with a daily dialogue to say, what do we need? I mean, that's one of the things we've done at the Department of Education to try to model that. To say that we do have a student, advisory, both middle school and high school. We do have a parent advisory. We do have a special needs advisory. We're looking at business and, a teacher advisory. So, that dialogue needs to continue to develop. But I think by, giving us that opportunity, we do have it now. But again, it comes down to leadership. You can have any system in place, but if you have poor leadership, again, you can I mean, I've seen it, day one, I've seen great systems, both private, public, homeschool. But it comes down to the investment, so I hope, at that public leadership, I don't really want to see a statewide, because it needs to be local. Because I guarantee you, working up there in the office, I don't get to see, and it's taken me 3 years just to see every single school district, not visit all 2,300 schools. So that's the importance of local control, and, like to